Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And today we are happy to be joined once again by our certain POV brethren, Case Aiken. Welcome back, Case.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back.
No worries. Happy to have you here. We don't normally talk about specific games on episodes, but I guess we're going to stick with a franchise today because as of this recording, very recently, Mega Man 11 was released, the first mainline, main series Mega Man title to be released in, I believe, over 8 years. And
Correct.
This is a series that has been around for about 30, and it's kind of an interesting series to be looking at for that reason. And actually, Case, this was you suggested this topic, so let's get started.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had noted that Matt had started doing a lot of like screenshots and like chronicling his progress both for this and then also the recently released Mega Man X collections.
Mm-hmm.
And I had also gotten those, and it has been my joy to start replaying them a bit. And I'm making some progress in Mega Man 11, and I figured we had some shared love of this. And Geoff, I know you and I have talked a lot about the franchise of Mega Man, so
Yes, we have.
Seemed to be a worthwhile topic since it's a type of game that gets some retro love, but doesn't really have like a good, solid, modern contemporary, like a mainstream contemporary.
And, well, Keiji Inafune did try to release Mighty Number 9, but a lot of us know how that turned out.
Yeah, and that was also like as a Kickstarter style project. So that's not even like a big studio being like, let's commit to this. It was more just a pet project that got some buzz, and so people adopted it to actually put it out on major releases and not just Steam.
Right. Well, I do think it's kind of funny that it is definitely a game or a series that while there are other series that other companies will ape success, like there are games that feel like Castlevania games, there are games that feel like Final Fantasy games, there are games that feel like Mario games. Even if they don't feel exactly, but they borrow a lot. Mega Man, I don't know what it is, but there are things that feel like Mega Man that most companies don't do. It almost feels too close.
Yeah, I would say that with Mega Man, the only company to sort of mimic that was the Yacht Games that did
The Shovel Knight.
Because the individual stages and the bosses with different shovels, like that. You know, the Propeller Knight, you know, the Winter Knight and all that felt like a Mega Man style run through, but even still, you didn't get their powers or anything. I think for me, Mega Man has this long and storied history with me because it was the second Nintendo game I ever got was Mega Man 2. I actually, fun fact, never played Mega Man 1 until the first Mega Man collection came out on the GameCube, which is a nightmare, and we'll get to the difficulty stuff after, but I had actually, going back to a topic that me and Geoff had discussed about demoing games and playing early versions of the game, when I played the demo of Mega Man 11, I hated it. Like, it just didn't feel right. It wasn't fun. I didn't understand the gear mechanic. But I then watched a ton of reviews. Anyone who listens to our show knows that I'm a big fan of a lot of YouTubers, including the Completionist and Some Call Me Johnny, who both did Mega Man 11 videos. And I watched them because I love their work anyway. And they both had such high praise for these games, and I know how much they love the retro games, that I was like, ugh, it's got to be better than that demo. And lo and behold, I'm 2 bosses through, and I'm loving it. It's that right amount of hard enough that you die a lot, but not hard enough that you want to give up. I'm also not playing it on normal or superhero because I'm not a sadist. I'm playing it on one of the easier difficulties first. Just to
same.
Get used to it. But Mega Man's a series that I've loved for a long time, and my love from it actually probably comes from a different place from both of you, because while I love the gameplay and I love the characters and all of that, the music is always what pulled me to that series. Besides the first game, like I said, which I haven't played as much as the others, I could recite from memory and hum the tunes for all of the bosses from Mega Man 2, 3, 4. You'll probably remember the main title themes. There's some of the best remixed themes that I found online. Like Gemini Man's Stage's theme is still one of the best salsa songs I've ever heard, because it's just got one of those funky beats that I love so much. And so that's what always brought me back to the series. And I'm happy to report so far, Mega Man 11's music is phenomenal. It's absolutely memorable and a lot of fun.
Yeah, the original Mega Man's music, not quite as memorable. The original Mega Man in
I
general.
don't know. It's kind of earwormy at spots. It is definitely something that has been stuck in my head at times, particularly Cutman stage.
And the Electman stage is pretty good too.
Yeah.
But I guess it's the fact that Mega Man 2 had such a iconic soundtrack that it was just sort of like Mega Man 1 what, I guess. But,
yeah, I mean, comparing Mega Man 1 to the rest of the games is unfair because as a first game, it's still really great. It's just every game, I'd say up until Mega Man 8 even, reinvented the wheel and revolutionized that game both musically and play style. It's not until Mega Man 9 and 10 where they forced the retro play and removed the slide and the charge shot to make it harder that I felt the series took a dip. Like, I hated both of those two games, but up until then, I loved every single Mega Man game, some more than others, but still all of them. And so
that's an interesting stance, though, regarding like saying it took a dip, because people would argue that like after 8 there was a decent sized gap, and people thought it was sort of a lull in the series that 9 and 10 were trying to like sort of be a shot in the arm for.
Yeah, I think my problem with 9 and 10 being a shot in the arm is like 7 and 8, 7 on the Super Nintendo and 8 on the PlayStation did such great advancement in graphics and soundtrack and storytelling, besides 8's questionable cutscenes and voice acting, they had taken a step up. And then, yes, there was a large break, but then they took a dip back, and I feel backwards because reverting it to retro style look is fine. I get why they did that, but to remove the charge shot and the slide, which have been staples for 1, 2, 3, 4, like 6 games, just didn't make sense. And
that's why I always played as Proto Man in those games.
And they also made them so much harder. 10 had an easy mode, but I struggled so much with 9 and couldn't beat even one of the bosses that I didn't bother with 10. And like, I get that Mega Man, to steal something from the internet, Mega Man is the original Dark Souls of video games. I can't believe I just said that.
It's okay.
It was also not wrong, so it's fine.
Right. It was always hard, though, but like, and you guys, I imagine, would agree, 2 through 6 were not so hard that you couldn't eventually advance, where I feel like 9 and 10, they made it so hard, closer to 1, that it just was less fun.
Well, something interesting that I think they were really doing with 9 and 10, Matt, we've talked before about how a lot of retro-style games now are sort of designed to look and play like how we remember those games were, not actually how they were. They're sort of like a nostalgia filter. But most of those games are new properties. Mega Man has its foot in those days. So it's almost an overcorrection. There's nothing wrong with it looking the way it does, and I'm sure if I go back and I look at 9 and 10, there's going to be plenty of things where, okay, that's way more sprites than an NES could handle.
Right.
But it is still very much that. And it's kind of funny that you talk about all the advances that they make, whereas I feel like in a lot of ways, Mega Man is kind of the AC/DC of video game franchises. Where
Go on.
Well, AC/DC is a band that has released, 20 albums, something in that regard.
Ridiculous number, yeah.
A high number. Certainly more albums than I've ever released. And one could argue that they don't really change up their sound much from album to album. It's not like they retread songs. They certainly don't, but it feels like they found a sound and they do it. You could have a lot of different villains, but it's always Wily.
Yeah,
you could have some branching paths. Like, one could even argue that Mega Man is a proto-Metroidvania, where rather than exploring one large interconnected world where you find new items and things that teach you how to traverse new spots and access new things, you have like 8 doors in front of you in your hub world, and you pick those and you take it in any order, and these things help each other out.
Yeah.
So I guess that's... Whereas we go, there hasn't been a lot of Mega Man style stuff made. Maybe it's because it does have its roots in Metroidvanias or proto Metroidvanias. And
what's funny though is you talk about open worlds with like a Metroidvania, and I'd say Mega Man is arguably in one regard more open than those because it doesn't have the gating component that
True.
Metroidvanias do. But on the other hand, it's like, but you also don't backtrack when you're actually in the level either.
But you
So
do repick levels as soon as you were able to.
in the later games, you couldn't
from
do it
Mega
in the
Man
first
4
two.
onwards, yeah.
Well, I think it's also really interesting, so we talked briefly about Mega Man X, and I feel like if we're going to talk about Mega Man X, it'll be a separate episode. But what I experienced replaying it and posting about it is my first stage to start and the first boss for me to beat was always Chill Penguin in the first game. Whereas other people, my friend Chris, who commented on it, and I believe Case, you, said that you had different start bosses. And so
I started with Chill Penguin, but I do Chill Penguin, then Sting Chameleon. I get the armor first.
Right.
Sting Chameleon's the only thing that like breaks it from after that doing weakness order.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so what's interesting to me is like what I loved about, I experienced this recently with the online community talking about other Mega Man games, is I always started with Metal Man and Mega Man 2 because he was more or less the weakest to the Mega Buster. But I know tons of people who started with other bosses, and that's what I always found fascinating about the boss system in Mega Man is, A, if you're only using the Mega Buster and not really using the powers to kill them and just doing it the harder route, it doesn't matter what boss you go to. But also because it's a loop of weaknesses that, whoever you kill first is still weak to the person you will end up killing last. You can kind of start anywhere, which I've always found really fascinating about that series. And I think it stands out more in the Mega Man X series because there are other MacGuffins to get besides just the powers. Whereas in Mega Man, for the most part, it's just the powers. Bringing it back to Mega Man 11 a little bit, I do want to report that it's some of the best voice acting in any Mega Man game, though the bar was low for that.
Very low.
And the backstory. So the game starts with a flashback between young Wily and young Dr. Light.
Light/Right. Yeah. I love that sequence, by the way. Like showing the young designs for them.
And that it shows that Dr. Light/Right was kind of a dick to him back then. And it's just really interesting to me to get a chunk of backstory. Also, like the cutscenes are really vibrant. What I love about this, and it reminds me of Octopath Traveler in a sense that these games like this are taking less because they're clearly doing graphically less intense stuff and still making it super expressive. What I loved about the sprites in Octopath Traveler is even though they were more or less modeling 16-bit, is that the faces were still super expressive. And Mega Man is doing that with Mega Man 11, even though they're doing pseudo 3D side-scrolling sprites. Like the faces are still super expressive. The body language is super expressive. Like at one point, Otto cowers behind Dr. Light, and like Otto is a giant robot, twice the size almost of Dr. Light. And so like, I just think it's really brilliant to show these characters in this light and give more of a backstory. They brought back some mechanics from 8 and I think 7 where you can use bolts to buy parts to either buy depletable items or upgrades and all sorts of stuff. And I think it's a really true return to form, whereas I felt like 9 and 10 left out a lot of the stuff that the previous games had done right. And that's why I feel like 11 is a true return to form, because even though graphically it's very different from the old games, the gameplay, the style, the feel of it feels very retro, even though it looks beautifully new.
It's a nice risk.
I will say, having played through it a bit now, too, it definitely feels like a classic Mega Man game with updated visuals as opposed to, like, a different kind of design scheme. Like, I revisit the X series more. Like, Mega Man X1 is one of my top 3-ish video games.
It's an excellent game.
Yeah.
But I'm tish. But it's just a fun game, and I love the armor components, and the wall jumping and dashing for me really like cemented the Mega Man games for me. Like I was always a huge Mega Man like classic fan, but when X came out, it like totally changed my concept of how to play, because like I'm actually fairly good at those kind of twitch controls, so all of a sudden I was able to like effectively fight bosses even without their weapons in a way that I just was not good enough at pattern memorization for the classic series. So looking at this one, it's like, oh no, those spike configurations, those are just like a Bubble Man stage. Like, oh no, these like platforms, they work just like a classic Mega Man, like a Nintendo Mega Man, and you could just as easily imagine it with like a black background and like maybe a couple like line work details to sort of indicate the setting, like those really good ways that Capcom used to like have to like inform your artwork. You can visualize that now, but they're actually providing the real details. It's impressive how nostalgic it feels, is I guess what I'm trying to say.
No, that's a really good thing. And And it's nice that a game like this has come out. Mega Man has been a series that, I don't know, like, yeah, it's been a long time since Mega Man 10 came out. And before 9, it was a while after 8. And I don't know how many of us thought we were going to, this time last year be getting a game like this. For a while, the only Mega Man style releases were sort of fan games that Capcom then gave the thumbs up on. Like, did either of you play Mega Man X Street Fighter?
No, but I've watched playthroughs of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like that was a game that a fan was making, and Capcom went, okay, cool. Here's some extra resources. We'll release the the digital release of that. And yeah, no, Mega Man, you're right. Okay, so it's a little less of the kinetic sort of gameplay of Mega Man X. It's a lot more methodical in how you go about bosses and how you traverse obstacles. It's nice that they've brought back a lot of the tweaks and evolution of the character. You don't need to. I think they threw the baby out with the bathwater when they released Mega Man 9 and Mega Man 10, where it's like, okay, a lot of people had bad things to say about Mega Man 8. Well, maybe we've just changed too many things. Let's go super back so people have nothing to complain about. And releasing anything to the greater internet so that nobody has anything to complain about is a fool's errand. And it's great that the character models are being so much more expressive now. This Mega Man and Mega Man X are not the only ones who are guilty of this. But there's been a long time, and I don't know if we're fully out of the woods on it, but certainly like PS2 era, even PS1, where we felt voice acting was really going to add life to these characters, and that was going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, because there wasn't enough processing power, there wasn't enough like smoothness of animation or whatever else to have there be physically expressive characters, and we all know how that turned out.
Yeah, as someone who recently played through the first half of the Mega Man X Legacy Collection, the cutscenes. The animation of the cutscenes for X4 is phenomenal. The voice acting, however, is completely laughable. And it was mostly the same thing with Mega Man 8. While the gameplay was solid as hell, the cutscenes were laughable. And what I like, though, about where we are with Mega Man, and like Case is saying that Mega Man X is one of his favorite games of all time. I think we can all agree that Mega Man X is one of the tightest made action platformers ever made. However, I will argue, and we can go into more detail on another episode about this, the Mega Man X series has more pitfalls and terrible games than the Mega Man series does. And that's because Mega Man X existed longer in a generation where Mega Man didn't, and Mega Man was a more simplistic formula, because X6 and X7 are atrocious games, but that's also because they made the leap from PlayStation to PlayStation 2. They tried to do 3D. They introduced another character. Like, they tried to over-innovate, and it sunk it. Whereas Mega Man, at least with 9 and 10, as much as I'm complaining about it, at the core of it, they're still Mega Man games, and they're completely playable. Whereas, like, X7 and sort of X8 are almost unplayable because they're just so poorly designed. And so,
have you tried to beat X6? There's way too much RNG in that.
No, yeah. I mean, so the thing is that I love about the Mega Man series is that besides introducing Proto Man and some other things in certain games, for the most part, the formula has stayed the same to a degree. And because there's no armor and there's no special upgrades and chips and other stuff, it allows them to iterate on it a little more easily. Like, I would say the biggest pitfall in the Mega Man series for me is 9 and 10, and 7 and 8 aren't perfect games, but I like them. But as a whole, also for me, Mega Man is one of the first franchises I played besides Mario and Metroid, and so it has a special place in my heart. Like, I don't need an in-depth story. I'm glad to get it with 11, but also I just need to be a tiny blue character shooting things and jumping around a stage. And as long as I don't feel like the game is cheating, I'll enjoy it.
Yeah, like the Mega Man franchise, because now it's harder to remember what it was like when the Nintendo games were still coming out. But like I remember like when 5 and 6 came out, people were really complaining about how iterative it had become. Like it's oh, it's the same thing every time. And when you look at it, like 6 came out actually only like a little bit before X, and that felt like such a huge leap in game design. But it's weird to look at like now from a different style or like different time in terms of how video games are released. Like the original Mega Man games, if they were coming out now, it would just be like expansion packs or like updates. It's like here's the new like set of bosses and like areas, if you're going to keep those mechanics so close together, like without those big changes that we would see. Like I can't think of a sequel nowadays that doesn't at least try to like have some big selling point besides just more levels. It's like a new style or a new character, new big story. Even games that are like kind of samey between them, like all the modern military shooters, try to have something kind of more distinct.
Something to distinguish them, yeah.
Yeah, from the previous one, as opposed to just like a level pack. So like when 8 and 9 came out, it would have been fine. I was like, oh, well, we're getting more of that iteration as long as you're doing more. And I think the problem is that they also kind of stopped making other types of Mega Man games at the same time. Like if they had also done like a Sonic Mania style 32-bit-esque Mega Man X series, like where they were doing Mega Man 4 style graphics, but making new levels at the same time as Mega Man, if that was X9, I think people would have been like, oh, okay, all right, so they're going super old school in this one, doing a middle ground here, and then like whatever Battle Network or other thing they're kind of doing, that's also cool. But they weren't at that point. They were sort of hunkering down and trying to be like, we're just going to double down on our most classic like stripped down version and go from there. And that like fans liked it, but I remember the buzz was really positive for both 9 and 10.
Yes.
But like once you've played through it, like it didn't reignite my fervor for the series by itself. Right. Like it's like, oh, these are great additions to the series in terms of boss design and like cool mechanics and doing an 8-bit style, which was big then and still is big. But because it was Capcom, so it wasn't like I had to like champion someone like Shovel Knight was like a smaller project, or like any of these like
or like The Messenger that just came out.
Yeah, like even if it's like the big creator, like even if Mighty Number 9 had been successful, you know that people would have been like all about it if it had been actually a good game. But that's sort of the problem there.
Right. Well, I think also for me with these games, I like you said, when 9 and 10 came out, I was not excited for more. I didn't even buy 10. Whereas now that 11 is out, and I've only played a little bit of it because I'm busy juggling it between that and Spider-Man because birthdays are great. I'm now excited for future Mega Mans, especially let's talk about the double gear system, which we have not talked about yet, which is a new mechanic in the new Mega Man game. It's it's an invention that Wily created when he was younger that they show in the flashback, and that he's iterated into all the new robots that he stole from Light, this is the first time in a while also he's stolen robots like in the early games, because that's in the first game he stole Wright's robots, not built his own. But this system allows you to use one gear that just makes you more powerful, your blasts do more damage, or a gear that slows down time around you so you can react. And so the game is designed, and it's truly true, I guess we'll go with that, that you can play the whole game without the gear system. You don't need to use it. The game is designed in a way to play like a classic Mega Man, and you don't need to use it. However, for players who are novice or who want a different experience or just struggle with certain levels, it gives you a diversity in play style that allows you to progress through stuff that you might struggle with otherwise, which I think is really brilliant.
Yeah, I like the gear system. It is unobtrusive if you don't want to use it.
And that's, I think, the best way to incorporate a new mechanic, because it's not like in the new Assassin's Creed games where they give you a ship battle system that you, after a first tutorial, never need to do again, but it's there and they keep giving you missions. This is a game mechanic that you can completely ignore, and it doesn't change the game, but it also isn't, you're not constantly being told to use it either.
It's built into the game, but it's not like when they made Mega Man and Base, where there was a clear delineation as to like, okay, no, I can't even get through the level unless I can jump higher. So I got to play the other character.
Right.
And they even designed the bosses in Mega Man 11 to utilize the double gear system because that's sort of the conflict.
Yeah. Meanwhile, the gear system, the one thing that is nice for it is while it is an interesting mechanic that you get to use, it doesn't actually give you anything that you didn't have otherwise. Like the speed up effect, there is nothing that you're able to do, or slow down, however, whichever perspective you're looking at it from. Either Mega Man's getting faster or everything's getting slower. Like that. There's nothing you can do that you wouldn't be able to do without it. Like if your reflexes were fast enough. And sure, your shots might do more damage when you're using them, but like that's just a matter of hitting them more. Like it's not giving you like a different shaped blast. It's not like the super cannons in like the first X game where it gave you like a backsplash and like a giant area of effect. Like this doesn't do any of that. It actually just fires off a second Mega Buster shot at the same time.
Yeah. And also, I think that it's really cool with this game that it allows you to, again, continue playing Mega Man like you may have in the past, as well as trying new things with this game specifically that you couldn't do in the other games. I would be remiss, though, if we didn't talk about some Mega Man games that some people may not know about or remember, but I do, like Mega Man Soccer for the Super Nintendo.
I played the shit out of that game.
So did I. And what's funny is, so the new Legacy collections just come with the base series games. The X collection is X1 to 8, and the Legacy Mega Man collection is Mega Man 1 to 10. None of these side games are included. But in the Mega Man collection back in the day on the GameCube and the Xbox, you could unlock some of the side games like Mega Man Power Battles, which was a Mega Man fighting game, and Mega Man Soccer. And Mega Man Soccer, for those who don't know, it was literally a soccer game that had a season, and you could play. You played as Mega Man in the story mode, and it was a team of Mega Men.
A team of Mega Mans.
But as you beat each Robot Master, you could add them as a player to your team and use their special powers. And so Mega Man had the Mega Buster, where like every character had a super they could use after X amount of time, where you would fire the ball with your power. So like Dust Man threw dust around it, and it would trap people and go past them. Like it was a fairly innovative arcade soccer game for something nobody asked for. And I always have fond memories of it, though when I went back to play it like 5 or 6 years ago, it doesn't necessarily hold up controls-wise, but it's still super fun.
Yeah, the controls are a bit rough. The graphics are still beautiful because Capcom was great at 16-bit graphics.
And it was just one of those games that was just so bizarre. And like you mentioned it to people, and they do exactly like what Geoff does, is like, oh yeah, I remember that. That game was weird. You know, like the same with Mega Man Power Battles. Like nobody asked for a Mega Man fighting game, yet it was a lot of fun. And it mixed up.
I don't know. I was asking for a Mega Man fighting game and when that came out and I could never find a cabinet, I was really mad.
When you think about it, like that's also a piece of Mega Man's DNA with the showdown with the Robot Master. I mean, yeah, there's boss fights in all kinds of video games, but you sort of get to go into like a little arena and you face off against them. It is sort of a fighting game.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we talk about Mega Man games in terms of like the bosses that were in those games, as opposed to, and like that's how we define the levels that you played.
Yeah,
like you don't talk about Sonic games in terms of like what machine Robotnik happened to be using on that stage. You remember the stage, and that just happens to include Green Hill. He had the ball that was like dangling, or like in the water stage, of course, he was destroying the platform that you were like gonna fall like into the water and die. But it's the stage that matters. It's not like, and those bosses are built around the stage to be like integrated into that. Whereas like it's the other way around in Mega Man. Here's the boss, and then here's the stage you extrapolate from.
And although both Mega Man and Sonic are very well known, and rightfully so, for their stage music.
Yes.
But Mega Man games, they have that sort of fighting game-esque. There's a lot of personality and character in the character designs, and they have to have that because you gotta like remember these guys. You don't get a ton of backstory. Did anyone read the bios for the bosses in Mega Man 8? Because I did. It doesn't inform things too much, but yeah, it has that same sort of like, you've really gotta remember these guys quickly because they're who you're running towards.
Well, I think also with the Mega Man sprites, like you're talking about expressiveness, like think about classic Mega Man. Every time he jumped, mouth open, eyes wide, or Wily, the famous eyebrow waggle that he does in literally every game. These are characters that I think with little backstory are more than you could have ever imagined. Like, think about Breakman to Proto Man, and the idea that there's this character that shows up in several stages and then you face off against. You have no idea who he is. You have no backstory for who he is. You just know that he's working with Wily, and then he rescues you at the end of the game, and you're, you know, like things like that. And then he becomes Proto Man. You find out he's your brother, and he was built by Wily, and all this stuff. Like, it's just, they iterated on a game series without needing a ton of dialogue or story. And then, of course, they had a cartoon, which was hugely popular as well, which kind of reinforced a narrative that was always in the instruction manuals, which was really awesome.
And it shows that although some people complain about the iterative story, you don't necessarily need to, if it's not a worthwhile story, or sometimes a little bit of story is all you need. But all this being said, speaking of like the character and, you know, je ne sais quoi of the Robot Masters, do either of you guys have a favorite Robot Master or certain ones?
So I definitely do. I mean, my favorite character in all of Mega Man, which is so counterintuitive to Mega Man, since you barely get to use him, is Proto Man. I mean, I think as a kid it was, he had a shield, he had sunglasses and a scarf, he just looked cool, he had a bad attitude. Like, growing up I liked Raphael the Ninja Turtles, so you can see the iteration here. But
yeah, he's Racer X. If this was
right,
yes.
exactly.
Like, he was my favorite character too.
He's the token
like,
cool guy, like, you know, which all 80s and 90s cartoons and games had. But anyway, from the Robot Masters, as I said, Gemini Man is one of my favorites because he had the coolest design with the crystals coming off him.
Oh yeah,
that was a really
and
good one.
I love his stages music. So that's Mega Man 3. He's definitely one of my favorites. In Mega Man 2, I loved Metal Man because he was just a metal ninja. Like, he was a ninja who threw saw blades. And then I would say in some of the later games, like, I liked how ridiculous some of the bosses were in 8, like Shadow Man. And he was just a vampire, essentially, like a robo-vampire.
Shade Man.
Shade Man. So I loved him too. But I would say if I had to pick one Robot Master to be my favorite, it would probably be either Top Man or Gemini Man. Because the two of them just had such cool stage music, and they had such cool design, like Top Man with the top and the spin and how he'd kind of roller skate around. Worse power for Mega Man to use because it was almost impossible to use essentially a melee.
And you needed it for Shadow Man of all bosses.
I know.
Yeah, and it drained super fast, so you couldn't even really use it very well. Like, it wasn't forgiving when you tried to use it, and it was hard to use.
Yeah, there's like finer points about it, and I now know more about it, and I feel more charitable towards it, but it's definitely the most unintuitive power since Guts Man's.
So if I had to focus in, I'd say Gemini Man and Top Man are my top two Robot Masters.
Cool.
Yeah, 3 had some great designs. Because I was thinking Needle Man and Spark Man from the same game are two of my favorite. Like, Needle Man, I love that he had an additional weapon component with that, like,
the head attack
thing of needles on his head that would attack, and then also like a gun. It felt like a nail gun. So like the ones that have kind of like, oh, this feels like a real world use of an ability. Feel cooler, kind of the same thing for Sparkman, where he feels like a spark plug, and he's got like prongs that seem like it's actually going to electrocute you, as opposed to just like lightning comes from his hands. Like, things where it felt like actual mechanical components that made sense for the powers. I've always liked, because it's like kind of, it's sort of the same reason I like really liked Iron Man as a kid. It's like you want to think that this could be real.
Yeah. You see the steps, you see the connection.
Yeah. Meanwhile, it's funny you mentioned Gutsman, who I have a really soft spot for, even though I don't think they've ever effectively used him. Like,
truth.
Like, I love his general design. I would love like I think Geoff, you and I had talked about this back in the day, like a Gears of War style update to Mega Man, where it's like a third person run and gun kind of thing, built around like moving through these like hostile environments and both taking cover, and I was thinking dash and wall jump also would be really kind of fun, and have Gutsman be like a big boss that could actually be like this hydraulic thing in like a construction site, like ripping apart stuff and throwing it at you, rather than like the 8-bit very basic, I pick up boulder, I throw it, like
yes,
yeah,
I have rock, I throw rock,
right. But it was so fun that there were rocks that you could throw, like that part I loved.
No, it's pretty awesome. And I would say some of my favorites, I tend to really enjoy the ninja derivative characters. I'm not even a big like, oh man, ninjas are the coolest. But I don't know. I like Shadow Man. I like Ring Man in Mega Man 4.
Cool. Yeah.
I mean, even like Tengu Man in Mega Man 8. I mean, that's a little more of the arrogant swordsman type, but I like his design. I like the wind powers. Tornado Hold is such a cool power for its mobility that using it later in the game. And
were you a fan of Boomer Kuwanger?
I could never get past what the hell's a Kuwanger, but I do like him more now.
Storm Eagle in that game was probably like my favorite, like straight up design. It's not very interesting, but he just looks so goddamn cool.
When he flies in and does the full wingspan, you're just, oh man, it's on. And yeah, no, and you're right. Mega Man 7 had some goofy designs. Turbo Man, the guy turning into a race car, and I mean, I also really liked Nightman in Mega Man 6.
Yeah.
Again, a very simple design, not that inspired really, but just I again enjoyed the simplicity of this is a mechanical suit of armor that has a big old mace that he's just shooting at you. It comes back. I guess that's like that for Case. That like that's my kind of real world-ish connection.
I do want to give a shout out to the only female robot master, which was Splash Woman, who, if you haven't heard Mega Ran's rap about Splash Woman, it's an amazing, amazing song. But like, that's something that I've noticed that we've never come back to. She was the only female robot master, which is kind of a bummer.
I was annoyed that didn't come back for 11. Like, this would have been a good opportunity for a few spots.
Before we wrap up, I think it'll be fun if you guys can focus in on one Mega Man game that's your absolute favorite, because I absolutely have one, and then we can close out. Like for me, I love some of the modern stuff. 11's really great, but my absolute favorite Mega Man game, warts and all, is the second Mega Man game. As much as I love Gemini Man and Proto Man, and I love the third game, 2 felt the tightest as far as Robot Masters, level design, music, Wily's Castle, everything. Like, that's easily my favorite Mega Man 2, favorite Mega Man. But I will also admit it's probably the nostalgia of it being one of the first I ever played. But that is absolutely my favorite Mega Man.
Yeah, I feel like nostalgia weighs so heavily on this because you say that.
It does.
And my gut reaction after noting that, like, all right, we'll probably Mega Man X1, but if we're only talking classic, is Mega Man 3, which is the first Mega Man game that I owned. I played Mega Man 2 because my neighbor had it, and we played that a lot, and then my parents got me 3, and we're like, we got both of them, we can play but that's my go-to if you're like, what was your favorite Mega Man classic game? And then like after that, 5, because Proto Man featured heavily, and I loved Proto Man, but it's I acknowledge that it's entirely just the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, mine too. I enjoyed Mega Man 6 for the Rush Power Adapter stuff, as
that was cool,
controversial as it was. But my favorite is also Mega Man 3. That was growing up. We had 3 and 4 in our house. Those are the Mega Mans we had. We eventually got 6, and Mega Man 3. It allowed us to kind of 2-player it with my older brother, because there is I don't know whether you call it a cheat or whatever. If you have the second controller plugged in when you played it, if you held down...
the super jump?
Right. Well, the super jump and the animation slowdown. You could also, basically if you hold down right on the second controller, you can... There's no limit to the same limit to sprites. You could just go up to a boss and just keep shooting at them. And they take extra long to go through their animations. And their attacks don't happen until the animations do. So you could run up to a boss, hold that down, and just go to town on them. Granted, if you got hit while that was going on, you would then have to go through your entire hurt animation at that same slow speed. Sort of a proto double gear system.
Yeah, I was going to say, that sounds just like the gear system.
I guess it's been there the whole time and we didn't realize it. But this was how my brother and I would play Mega Man 3. I would be the second controller. He would tell me when to push it down, and he also would tell me to keep an eye on his life to tell him when he's getting low so he can use an energy tank. We had differing opinions as to what qualified as critical health, but we're past that. And so, yeah, I've I haven't played a mainline Mega Man game that I didn't at least like, if not love. But, with all that nostalgia, and I enjoyed the Doc Robot fights,
Yeah.
and the music is superlative. So, yeah, it's a common answer, but, let me be common. Mega Man 3 is my favorite.
Awesome. Of course, dear listeners, please let us know what your favorite Mega Man game was, as well as your favorite Robot Masters. Or if you hate the Mega Man series, tell us why, because I'm always interested to hear people's aversions to certain series, because we all have our biases. And so please let us know. A big thank you to Case for joining us and suggesting this topic. I could probably gush about Mega Man for another 4 hours, because it's one of my favorite running series, and I'm actually very excited it's back. You, of course, can find us all over the internet on Facebook, Twitter. You can write us an email at funandgamespod@gmail.com. Of course, you can find Case and the rest of our CPOV brethren on certainpointofview.com. Case has Another Pass podcast. We have Reignite, which is our newest show that I do with MJ Bradley. Of course, the flagship show, which is Certain Point of View, which is a Star Wars news and review podcast. And then, of course, the Scruffy Nerf Harders, which is a Star Wars adventure story that Case is the DM for.
Yep, and yeah.
Can I gush about that series for a quick second?
Yes, please.
Sure.
So, Scruffy Nerf Herders, for people who have been listening, we have been doing a huge story arc where they'd been crashed on a planet dealing with a sort of backwater hick tradition of Force users. And we are getting pretty close to the end of that arc, and I'm just so pumped to see what happens. We're about to record that episode on Monday, and it's going to be so cool, guys. Like, that's going to be the next 2 episodes, and I just hope, if you've been listening, it's cool stuff is coming. And if you haven't been listening, this has been a really fun run, and a good spot to come on will be about now.
We've been having a lot of fun with narrative with certain POV between Reignite and Scruffy Nerf Herders, and so even if we get a little bit derivative sometimes, I'm just speaking on a Mega Man thing, just trying to bring it back, I suppose. But yeah, we definitely look forward to hearing your opinions on the Mega Man series, the main line, and the spinoffs. Maybe we'll talk about the spinoffs a bit next episode, or maybe at some point later. Either way, let's keep this conversation going. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Geoff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Oh boy, it's a Mega Man game!
This game's like a legend.
It's good. It's really good.
I'm proud of us for not referencing that too hard.